Good afternoon, everyone.
Oh, excuse me.
Welcome to this 2 p.m. hearing of the House Committee on Higher Education and Technology. This is Friday, February 11th, and we are, at least some of us, in the State Capitol Conference Room 309. And to begin with, I would like to ask Vice Chair Representative Linda Clark to please go over the ground rules for this Zoom hearing.
Thank you, Chair. In order to allow as many people to testify as possible, there will be a 2-minute time limit per testifier. Please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. The Zoom chat function will allow you to chat with the technical staff only. Please use the chat only for technical issues. If you are disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. In the event of a network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision-making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Please avoid using any trademarked or copyrighted images. Please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from the hearing without the ability to rejoin.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. First up, we have House Bill 1833 relating to the UH, actually requiring the UH to establish in each county expanded teaching cohort programs for students pursuing undergraduate degrees in education. And first up, we have the Hawaii State Department of Education.
Good afternoon, Chair Takayama, Vice Chair Clark, and members of the committee. I'm Sean Bacon, Interim Assistant Superintendent of the Office of Talent Management, testifying on behalf of Superintendent Keith Hayashi and the Department of Education. The department stands on its written testimony in support of House Bill 1833 and is available to answer any questions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Next up, the UH College of Education.
Good afternoon, Chair Takayama, Vice Chair Clark, and members of the committee. Nathan Murata, Dean at the College of Education here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 1833 relating to the University of Hawaii system to establish in each county a K-12 expanded teaching cohort program for students who are pursuing an undergraduate degree in education. We stand on our written report and will be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the testifiers we have on HB 1833. Anyone else out there wishing to testify? If not, let's open it up to questions. Committee members? Seeing none, I have a question for Dean Murata, UH.
Yes.
You testified, of course, in favor of this proposal.
Yes.
Is there an estimated cost for implementing this measure? And what would it be?
If we were to have an estimated cost on this, if you're looking at each county across not only Honolulu, but the neighboring islands, you would minimally look at maybe about 1 to 2 FTEs per island, per county, to help primarily with the field supervision, the student teaching, the clinical experiences for our students that live on the outer islands, the neighbor islands. So you're looking at maybe 4 counties, about 2 positions per 2 FTEs, 2 faculty, university faculty positions.
So help me out, Dean Murata.
How
much does that usually?
What is that? I would say maybe $500,000 to $600,000 for 8 faculty members.
$500,000 to $600,000 per year
correct.
Pay for 8 UH faculty members to
For the FTE, correct.
oversee this program. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I don't have any other. I'm sorry. You had something else to add?
No, good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. No other questions. Let's move on to the next bill, which is House Bill 315, and it removes the $3 million cap on the amount the UH system can spend from tuition and fees on the UH Foundation. And first up, we have from the UH, Vice President Calbert Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. University of Hawaii has submitted testimony in support of this measure. I'll stand on that testimony, but only to point out that just because lifting or raising or expanding the cap that's currently existing in statute does not mean that the university intends to provide more funding to UH Foundation. However, the ability to do so is viewed as strategic and possibly very opportunistic in that the UH Foundation has already demonstrated that their ability to increase operations, to increase philanthropy and funding to the university goes hand in hand. Happy to answer any questions the committee may have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, UH Foundation, Tim Dolan.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Takayama, Vice Chair Clark, and members of the committee. Thank you so much for hearing the measure on House Bill 315. My name is John Hahn, Vice President for Administration and CFO at the University of Hawaii Foundation. I'm here on behalf of Tim Dolan, CEO of UH Foundation, who submitted a written testimony in support of the measure. Since 2004, UH has provided $3 million of annually direct support of UHF from the special funds. While the level of UH support has remained unchanged in 18 years, the foundation has increased fundraising from $29 million to more than $100 million in direct support of UH students, faculty, research so critical to Hawaii's economic health. By lifting the cap, we will generate even greater returns for Hawaii. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm here to answer any questions the committee may have on the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. UH Manoa Alumni Association, Kawahi Perez, in support. Let's see, we have Brandon Kurisu, UH Alumni Association, in support. Ken Hayashida in support, and Richard Wacker, an individual, in support. Anyone else out there wishing to testify on House Bill 315? Seeing none, members, any questions? Seeing none, I do have a question for Mr. Hahn from the UH Foundation. Now, in your testimony, you say that currently UH Foundation assesses a fee on gifts. So if I gave $100 to JABSOM, the UH Foundation takes 5% for administrative fees. And you're saying that if we were to enact this measure, you foresee not having to impose this 5% fee, which now I guess you collect about almost $8 million on that fee. Is that correct?
We do assess a 5% administrative fee on incoming cash donations, and that amounts to roughly $2 to $2.5 million a year. So it is one of the funding sources that support the University of Hawaii Foundation operations. It is something that we review on a regular basis and comparing it with other institutions across the country. And we will certainly take a look at it, but depending on the level of funding, I think that's something we'll have to assess based on what is available for the foundation.
Okay, because in your testimony, you say if the UH Foundation receives additional financial support from UH, it can reduce or eliminate this fee.
Certainly, we can look at reducing and eliminating the fee, but I think that would be a process that we'll have to consider as we determine how much additional funding sources are available.
Okay. And
Yes.
right now you get $3 million from UH Tuition and Fee Special Fund to support your administration, your personnel and staff and such. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you suggest removing this $3 million cap altogether. If we were to say, put a number amount on how much you would expect to receive in tuition and fees, what would that number be? In other words, instead of an unlimited cap, what would a possible new cap be?
Maybe about $6 million. I think
In
that
other
would,
words, double the amount that it is currently.
yes,
Okay.
that would
And
give
what-
us enough funding initially to ramp up our program and get to a level that we feel we can achieve.
And this $6 million would be used for continued administration and staff, et cetera?
It would be primarily for hiring up personnel on development staff. And this is to work closely with the university academic units and to raise awareness and raise funds for a number of different academic programs. So it would be,
Okay.
Yeah.
It's your expectation that with the increased amount of staff, you could increase the amount of gifts. Right now, you get about $100 million per year. Is that right?
yes. Yes, we can definitely increase our private funds that we can raise with additional staff.
Okay. Very well. I don't have any other questions. So let's move on to the next bill, which is House Bill 2185. And it, let's see, authorizes the UH to issue $100 million in revenue bonds for construction, maintenance, and modernization. And we have Vice President Calbert Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. University's position on this bill is to support. For the members' awareness, this bill is only to provide a refresh on the existing statute that provides a level of authorization for the university to issue revenue bonds. The current statute expires at the end of this fiscal year on June 30th. It is not to say that the university has any projects identified, nor have I seen the legislature identify any projects that it wants to fund via revenue bonds. The process for utilizing revenue bonds or authorizing capital projects to use revenue bonds requires the authorization statute, which is the bill in front of you, along with identifying and appropriating in the budget the projects to use revenue bonds. So bringing this bill is preemptive that should, over the next 4 years, if there are any projects that are either identified by the university, the executive branch, or the legislature to be funded with revenue bonds, the authorizing statute is already in place. I'm happy to answer any other questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. No other testifiers. Members, any questions? So just for our edification, Vice President Young, the difference between revenue bonds and general purpose bonds is that revenue bonds assume some kind of revenue generation from the project that is constructed. Is that right?
It would, so revenue bonds would have to be issued by a governmental agency like the University of Hawaii. So this would be for the University of Hawaii to issue revenue bonds. The debt service to pay back the bonds would be from revenues of the project that are to be financed, or the universe, or all of the revenues of the university, but they would not be debt service of the state of Hawaii. It would be of the limited to the university.
All right, thank you very much. Seeing no other questions, let's move on to the next bill, which is another administration bill, and it's House Bill 2188, and it recognizes a cost-sharing agreement for overall personnel expenses between state general funds and UH tuition and fees special fund. And we have Vice President Young again. Please
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So university is supportive of this measure. Members, please excuse, this will be a little bit of a technical explanation. This bill is to authorize and memorialize a practice that is currently in place that goes back to 2004, 2006. The practice allows the university to utilize tuition and fees revenues to pay for the salaries of positions in the budget authorized by the general fund, but for which the legislature does not provide sufficient general funds for salaries. When the university utilizes tuition and fees to pay for the salaries of those general fund authorized positions, the state would pay for the fringe utilizing general funds. This is a practice that goes back to 2004, 2006, at a time when the state had was experiencing a tax revenue shortfall and recession. So rather than eliminating government positions or jobs, this was a cost sharing arrangement that was put into place as an approach to share the cost of existing positions, where the state previously used to use general funds to pay for the salaries and fringe. But in order to save the state money, the university would put up tuition dollars to pay for the salaries, and the state would continue to pay for the fringe with general funds. Although the practice was established back around 2006, it was never memorialized or authorized in the statute. So this bill will do that. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Members, any questions? Seeing none, just for the members' benefit, I had to hear this explanation several times before I partially understood it. And as Vice President Young explained, it began out of a kind of necessity during the last recession when UH faced the prospect of drastic budget and personnel cuts. And rather than impose reductions in warm-bodied staff, the UH and state evolved this working agreement, where, as Vice President Young explained, the UH tuition and fees pays the salaries of certain employees, and the state general fund pays the fringe benefits, which is about half of their salaries. And this affects about 200 present UH employees, most of them at UH Manoa, but not exclusively at Manoa. And they range from teaching faculty to custodians to other staff members. So with that, if there are no questions, let's move on to the next bill. House Bill 2410, relating to information technology services consolidation working group to plan consolidation of all state executive branch information technology services. And let's see, first up we have Christine Sakuda, Transform Hawaii. Not present, but in support. Office of Enterprise Technology Services.
Aloha, we'll stand on our testimony in support of the bill.
Thank you. And that is actually all the testifiers I have. So let's open it up to questions from members. Any questions for Mr. Murdoch? Seeing none, I do have one question, more of a clarification. In the bill itself, there is reference to, on page 3, line 11, the formation of this group would be chaired by the state's chief information officer, who would serve as chairperson. That would be you, Mr. Murdoch. But then 2, 4, 5 lines later, it says it makes reference to a chief administrative officer who would invite other people to serve. Now, should that be chief information officer as well to make the titles consistent?
Yes, I believe it should.
Okay, we'll do so. And my other question is, what would be the estimated cost of such a task group, if any?
We don't anticipate extra costs for the task group. We did in our testimony mention that the governor's budget restores 2 positions in ETS, and there's money for those already in the governor's budget.
Okay, thank you very much. No other questions, so let's move on. Thank you, Mr. Murla.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the next bill, which is House Bill 1415, relating to establishing a program within the Hawaii State Fusion Center to operate and form and operate threat assessment teams for educational institutions. And first we have, let's see, from the Hawaii State Fusion Center, Kevin Baggs.
Good afternoon, Chairman Takayama and Vice Chair Clark and members of the committee. My name's Kevin Baggs, and I'm the director of the Hawaii State Fusion Center, which falls under the State of Hawaii Department of Defense. We support this bill and we stand on our written testimony. However, subsequent to the submission of that written testimony, we've learned from the Attorney General's that there is a legal issue regarding Section 5 that can only be remedied if that section were to be removed. But otherwise, we're in support of that bill, and thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony. I'm available for questions.
Okay, thank you very much. We have written state testimony, written comments from Craig Hirai, Director of Budget and Finance. And we have, let's see, the Department of Education, Randall Tanaka.
Good afternoon, Chair Takayama, Vice Chair Clark, and members of the committee. Randy Tanaka, Office of Facilities and Operations. On behalf of Superintendent Hayashi and the Department of Education, the department stands on its written testimony in support of a threat assessment program that would prevent targeted violence in our schools. We appreciate the inclusion of our recommended amendments by the committee, ready to stand by for questions should you have any. Aloha.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have Judge Jesse Hall from State District Family Court.
Good afternoon,
Hall.
Chair Takayama, Vice Chair Clark, and members of the committee. I'm Judge Jesse Hall. The Family Court stands on our testimony as written, and I'm available for any questions.
Okay. Let's see. We have testimony from the Honolulu Police Department, Thomas Taflinger.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Takayama and Vice Chair Clark. I am Thomas Taflinger, Major with the Honolulu Police Department, Major Events Division. The Honolulu Police Department, we are in support of the passage of House Bill 1415, and we'll stand on our written testimony.
Thank you. Let's see, that's all the testifiers we have on House Bill 1415. So let's go to questions from members. Members, any questions? Seeing none, may I ask Judge Hall a follow-up question? You basically expressed concerns about including information from the Juvenile Justice Information System in this proposed assessment team. So suggest deleting that section, which is Section 5 altogether. And would that satisfy your concerns?
Yes, it would.
Okay. And if I could go back to Mr. Baggs from the Hawaii State Fusion Center. I assume you are in agreement with the deletion of Section 5 and how it would not detrimentally affect the such threat assessment teams?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. And my follow-up question for you, Mr. Baggs, is what would be the estimated cost of operating this this measure, of implementing this measure?
We're requesting $100,000 to cover the expense.
First year cost of $100,000? Okay. And that would pay for?
Primarily, it would cover a lot of the training. We deliver training throughout the state, as well as bring people into the state. And then there are obviously some materials and then professional memberships that are associated with threat assessment. So.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no other questions, let's move on to the final bill of the day. And that is House Bill 2229, providing funds for a 2-year program at the UH to study the impact of sandbag walls on the North Shore at Ehukai Beach Park. And let's see, we have several testifiers. UH Vice President Vasilis Sermos.
Good afternoon, Chair Takayama. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Clark, members of the committee. We stand on our written testimony.
In support. Right?
In support.
Thank you. Written comments from the Director of Budget and Finance for the record. We also have, let's see, DLNR, Michael Kane.
Good afternoon, Chair, committee members. Michael Kane, Office of Conservation and Coastal Lands, on behalf of DLNR. We stand on our written comments. Our general preference is that funds would be appropriated towards studying management in the area. We feel that we do know the general effect of what sandbags are, but we also acknowledge the value in studying a specific region over a specific period of time. Knowledge is always helpful. With that, we've made some recommendations, small, that we feel would help the study, help us improve our management of the area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see, we also have a written testimony from Patrick Sullivan, Oceanet Laboratories in support, and Denise Antolini, an individual in support. So have I missed anyone? Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 2229? And if not, members, any questions? Okay. Friday afternoon, I'll be quick. Just a question for Vice President Sermos at the UH. What would be your estimation as to how much cost might be involved in this study?
I talked to Dean Morioka, the College of Engineering, about this project, and he estimates for 3 years between $300,000 to $500,000, including engineering services.
That would be over a 3-year period?
Correct.
So we're talking about a little over $100,000 to begin the first year.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, seeing no other questions, let's recess for December. For decision-making on our 2 p.m. agenda. First up, we have House Bill 1833. Chair's recommendation is to pass this with an amendment affecting the effective date, including in the committee report. Should the Committee on Finance consider this measure, that the proposed amount to be spent on this program would be in the neighborhood of $600,000, which would fund 8 full-time positions throughout 4 counties. Members, any questions, comments, or concerns? If not, Vice Chair Clark, would you take the vote?
Thank you, Chair. Now voting on HB 1833. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Bellotti.
Aye.
Representative Ganadin.
Aye.
Representative Gates. Excused. Representative Hashimoto.
Aye.
Representative Capella.
Aye.
Representative Ono. Excuse. Recommendation is to pass with amendments. Noting Representative Gates is here.
Aye.
Thank you. Continuing on, Representative Quinlan.
Yeah, sure.
Excused.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Woodson.
Aye.
Representative Yamani.
Aye.
Representative Okimoto.
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next bill is House Bill 315, removing a cap on the expenditures on foundation. Chair's recommendation is to add a defective date, and instead of removing the cap altogether, replacing it with a figure of $6 million as a new cap on spending from tuition and fees. So members, any questions or comments or concerns? If not, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Now voting on HB 315. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair. Excuse me. Noting the absence of members Ono and Quinlan. Are there any members voting no? Are there any members voting with reservations? With all other members voting aye, the chair's recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next bill is House Bill 2185, an admin bill requesting $100 million for possible revenue bonds. Chair's recommendation is to pass this out with an amendment, defecting the effective date, blanking out the amount, and suggesting in the report that if Committee on Finance should consider this bill, that the recommended amount from UH is $100 million. Questions from committee members, comments or concerns? If not, Vice Chair.
Now voting on HB 2185. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Noting the absence of Representative Quinlan and Representative Ono, are there any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? With all other members voting aye, the chair's recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next bill is House Bill 2188 relating to putting in statute an existing cost sharing agreement between the state and the UH. And this again is an admin bill. Chair's recommendation is to move this forward as is. Questions, comments, concerns from members? If not, Vice Chair.
Now voting on HB 2188. Chair's recommendation is to pass as is, noting the absence of Representatives Ono and Representative Quinlan. Are there any members voting no? Are there any members voting with reservations? With all other members voting aye, the chair's recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. House Bill 2410 relating to information technology services. My recommendation is to move this forward with amendments, making consistent the title of Chief Information Officer in the bill and also adding a defective date. Questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
Now voting on HB 2410. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Noting the absences of Representative Ono and Representative Quinlan, are there any members voting no? Oh. Noting the presence of Representative Ono. Okay, thank you. Are there any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? With all other members voting aye, the chair's recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. House Bill 1415 relating to threat assessment. This came from a previous committee, and I've conferred with the previous committee's chair, and she agrees with a couple amendments to be made to this bill. First of all, in section 1, page 2, line 9, adding that this is an issue of statewide concern, and that's necessary to meet the constitutional requirement that matters involving UH governance be issues of statewide concern. Also, using the judiciary's recommendation that we delete section 5 relating to juvenile information. And I guess those are the changes in the bill, but adding in report language that the requested amount, should Committee on Finance consider this bill, is $100,000 to pay for training costs and other related expenses. So members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
Now voting on HB 1415. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Noting the absence of Representative Quinlan, are there any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations?
Reservations. Rep. Okimoto.
Rep. Okimoto, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
All others, with all other members voting aye, the chair's recommendation is adopted.
thank you very much. Final bill, House Bill 2229 relating to coastal erosion. Chair's recommendation is to move this forward as is, adding in the report language that the requested amount, suggested amount from the UH for the cost of such a study is between $300,000 to $500,000 over the next 3 years. So members, any questions or comments or concerns? See,
With changes, amendments?
no, no, it would be pass as is,
Okay,
and adding the
amount.
cost in the report language. Okay,
Okay,
so chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Vice Chair?
thank you. Now voting on HB 2229. Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Noting the absence of Representative Quinlan, are there any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations?
Reservations.
Thank you, Rep. Capella. With all other members voting aye, the chair's recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Have a nice weekend. We're adjourned.